We're just going to pause for a second because we need more chairs in here, Walter informed me, so we're just going to wait before we start the meeting, if that's okay. All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Grimsby. I'm first going to introduce committee members and staff. So the committee members in attendance this evening are Adam Mottershead to my left, Dan Collins to my right, and then we have two online, Dylan Bailey. Dylan, if you can just wave, and Fabia Billing. Fabia, thank you, and myself, Kevin Antonides, as chair this evening. So staff members present this evening are Walter Basic, our Assistant Director of Planning, and he was when there he is. Fiona Main online, and Dilhara Abouardine to my immediate left, the Administrative Coordinator and Secretary Treasurer of our committee. So just a brief announcement before we begin regarding live streaming. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are live streamed by the Town of Grimsby. Individuals and media may be audibly and or visually recorded during this meeting. As a reminder, all electronic devices are to be in silent mode during our committee meeting. I'll briefly outline the meeting procedures. The purpose of the application, any relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Copies of the decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent to any person who files a written request, and to do so, please email Dahara, the Secretary Treasurer, at cao@grimsby.ca. The applicant, the Town of Grimsby, the minister, or a specified person or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the OLT within 20 days of the date of giving of notice under Section 17 for consent, and within 20 days as well for the date of decision of a minor variance application. Specified persons and certain public bodies include public utilities but do not include an individual or community association. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on the application being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. Each participant will be provided 5 minutes to speak. Each participant may speak only once. If you hear your comment presented by someone else, please do not duplicate the remarks. When you're called, we ask that you state your name and address for the record as well. Agencies commenting on applications may request certain conditions be imposed. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. All members of the committee have viewed the properties on the agenda tonight and are familiar with the lands that are subject to the applications. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Do any of the members of the committee have a pecuniary interest in the matters before us this evening?
No.
No, and I have none. Requests for withdrawal or adjournment? Any? No. Approval of the minutes for the previous meeting. I have a motion by Dan Collins, seconded by Adam Mottershead, that the minutes of the meeting held February 21st, 2024 be approved. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye, or raise their hand for the video. Opposed, if any, was carried. And then we have an agenda, which you've probably seen online or passed out here in front of you. We're just going to change the order by a request, if that's okay. We'll deal with the Peach King application first. We have a number of staff here present, I think, dealing with the application. That's A024-162 Livingston Avenue. If there's any objections to that, otherwise we'll move the order around and just put that one to the front, if that's okay? Everyone's okay with that? All right. And then we'll proceed with the regular agenda order. So I'm going to pass it over to Dohara to take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so the purpose of the application for 162 Livingston Avenue is to construct or modify the parking lot in support of an addition or expansion of a community recreational center, which is the Peach King Center, and to permit 77 parking spaces, whereas 332 parking spaces are required. This is an image of the site plan, which was circulated with the notice of hearing. And this is an aerial view of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions on the site. And this is a plan of what's proposed. These are the agencies that have provided correspondence regarding the application, and I will just outline the summary of the correspondence to you now. Planning staff have no objections. The variances are considered minor in nature and meet the 4 tests. Public Works agrees with the comments planning has given. The NPCA has no concern with the proposed reduction in parking spots. The NPCA notes that a watercourse is present to the north of the subject property. Should a stormwater outfall be proposed within the regulated watercourses, an NPCA work permit will be required. And the following agencies had no comments to offer. Those are Grimsby Power, Niagara Region, and the Ministry of Transportation. And over to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there anyone speaking to this application? Could we just have you come forward to the mic and identify yourself? Thank you.
Good evening, Chair. My name is Sarah Sweeney. I'm the Director of Community Services and sponsor for the project. So just wanted to touch on a few quick items. I'm sure you're all very familiar with where the site is, but we have had quite a comprehensive staff team review quite a variety of scenarios and do a lot of analysis as to the parking needs we would need on the site. As you can imagine, a community center has quite a variety of different types of uses, and we've ran many scenarios from hockey games, basketball games, all kinds of different sort of combination uses, and looking at the site as a whole, not just the Peach King Center, but looking at Town Hall and even the other exterior spaces and how they factor in as well. So we feel very comfortable with the number that we've arrived at. We did also have an external consultant conduct a review as well to also look at the findings and tell us what they shared, and they agreed with our assessment. We were planning for typical peak uses on the site. We also spent a lot of time looking at the other types of uses on the site and have done a lot of enhancements to really make sure that the pedestrian and the cycling access to the site are really well managed, and that we're continuing to maintain the green spaces as best we can on the site. And the last point we just wanted to note is, the site is very much managed in terms of the volumes of visitors that come by how we program it. And that's something that we're very aware of. And not only is parking a consideration with that, but it's also such things as the lobbies, the flow of the facilities. So we very deliberately will be managing how the times that people are arriving and leaving and how many people are intended to be in the building, not just because of parking, but because of a variety of other factors as well. Did you have anything you want to add?
Sorry, did you want me to put up the diagram, Trevor?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, you can add to it.
Thank you.
If I could just add a few things. I'm Trevor Ruslow. I'm a staff member. I'm the project lead internally in Town of Grimsby. So with this up on the screen, I'll just do a quick walkthrough. So one of the nice pieces of this analysis for us is we have a lot of experience on the site. It's been 20 years that we've had the current condition, and we have a lot of experience with programming hockey, Peach King games, large events on the property. So we have a very good understanding. So really the question we were looking at, what do we need for the things that we add? And as Sarah noted, it's really about how we manage the programming on the site. So what we're looking at is the typical day-to-day use in an evening where you've got basketball, hockey, that type of thing, what's the usual condition? And are we making sure we're planning so that we have enough parking for when you come to attend, but also that we're not overtaking other green space, soccer field, making sure that we've got pedestrian pathways that connect. And our design team at McCallum Say, there's, I think, a really great job consolidating the parking as much as we can to make sure we have what we need to serve the new needs of the facility while maintaining good pedestrian access and maintaining access to green space on a site that has a lot going on between Town Hall, the Peach King Center, Parks Building. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those now.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members first?
No.
Oh, Dylan.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just would like some clarification on this. So, so currently there's parking for 309 vehicles. This variance will increase it by 77 to 386, I think. But only 332 are required. So I guess I just need to be clear on because it talks about an addition of parking spaces. So I'm not 100% clear. It seems like this is almost a good news story. So I'm wondering if I could just be clear on what it is that we're considering.
Thank you. Walter is going to address that, I believe. Walter?
Thank you, through you, Chair. There's a difference between how many parking spaces are being proposed on the site overall and what the zoning requires to accommodate the addition and what's actually being provided to accommodate the addition on a net basis. So some of the building is being removed and a new building is being added to the front of the existing arena space. Now, based on the net increase in floor area, there would be a required zoning addition of 300 and whatever the number of spaces are. However, we're only adding 77 spaces. So the 300 plus to 77 is the reduction that you're looking at only for the net increase in floor area based on the proposed addition. And the total number of parking being provided is the 386. If that makes sense.
Does that help? Dylan?
I'm not sure I understand, to be honest. I mean, I do get it for that particular piece, what we would need versus what it is that we're adding. But overall, for the entire site, are we then short by hundreds of spaces?
Yeah.
Or is that not a concern? Like, I guess I'm just sort of thinking long term here, and I mean the site is getting very built up, and I know that programming is going to help, but I guess I'm not understanding the finite points.
Okay, so the technical reduction is 300 plus to 77. That's the technical reduction, right? And that's what the application is. The intent of the official plan, the intent of the zoning bylaw, and determining what's appropriate for the or what's desirable for the appropriate development of the land, and to determine whether or not, in other words, the 4 tests, whether or not it's a minor reduction, is based on essentially what the intent of all these policy documents and zoning bylaw are, which is to provide the right amount of parking on a typical peak demand situation, which is what our staff has done, and it was substantiated by the parking study that was conducted by consultants that we hired. So the consultant said this many parking spaces are appropriate based on the uses that you're going to have in there on a typical peak demand basis. It's going to be more than enough, basically, is what they said. And so this is what you have to determine. Is it consistent with the intent? And the intent is to provide the right amount of parking. The intent of the zoning bylaw is to provide the right amount of parking for the uses on the site on typical peak demand. Is it desirable? The factors that you have to consider there are Are you providing too much parking and therefore reducing the amount of green space on the site? You have to provide a balance on how the site is developed. And it's our opinion that the site is being developed in a well-balanced way, providing the right amount of parking while maintaining the amount, a significant amount of green space on the site that the residents of Grimsby can enjoy. And the minor is, whether it's minor, it's not a numerical calculation. The minor is sort of like a summary of all the other tests that you apply to the proposal. So that essentially is what we're dealing with. The significant reduction that we identified in the notice, that's just a technical requirement in the zoning bylaw. And essentially, the zoning bylaw also says that whatever is existing is legal nonconforming, and you only have to account for an addition to an existing legal nonconforming situation. So the site is already deficient in the requirements of the zoning bylaw, but as a municipality, we're obligated to provide the right amount of parking to serve the users of the facility, and that's what we're doing here.
Thank you. Does that clarify things for you, Dylan? Yeah. Any other questions from the committee members first? No? Is there anyone in the audience that would like? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this application at all? No. If not, then do I have a mover and a seconder? Adam, if you want to just go through the tests. Make a motioner. Second.
There we go. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion, resolved that minor variance application A08-24 for 162 Livingston Avenue to permit 77 parking spaces, whereas 332 parking spaces are required as per section 5.1 and 5.12 in the zoning bylaw 1445 be, as amended, be approved with no conditions. And the reasons is the application meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, the visual plan, it's desirable for the development, and it's minor.
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any, was carried. And there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. I was, sorry. I know, everyone was sitting there, so I said me. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go back to the top of the agenda, which is minor variance A3223, 18 Park Road South, which is, I believe, a deferral from the previous meeting.
Correct, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just make this larger. So the purpose of this application for 18 Park Road South is to legalize the construction of a privacy fence as existing, and to legalize the privacy fence as existing to a maximum privacy fence height of 2.32 meters in a residential zone, whereas 2 meters is permitted. This is a copy of the site plan, which was circulated with the notice of hearing, or rather how it looks, the fence, and all the heights. These are the current, this is a picture of the neighborhood for context. These are some images of the current conditions of the site. And these are the agencies who have provided correspondence, which I will now summarize for you. So the planning department has no objections or conditions to the variance, and the following agencies have no comments or conditions. Those agencies are Public Works, Ministry of Transportation, Grimsby Power, and the NPCA. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is the applicant or agent here that would like to speak to this and maybe explain it? I know we heard at the last meeting, so maybe anything that's developed since. If you just get your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Ivan Shturkai. I'm at 18 Park Road South. And we're here about the fence. Built a privacy fence. Do we have all the pictures downloaded that I've given to the planning department?
It doesn't look like it moves through the, here we go. There we go.
Okay, well, we can start with that one there.
Okay.
If you look to the right, the fence there is about 3 inches off the property line. The fence on the left is about 19 and a half to 20 inches off the swale line of the property line. And I don't know why it wasn't built on the property line, but that's the neighbor's discretion. But if you can see this photo here, this is the photo what it looked like before I built the privacy fence. And then if you look at the finished product, yeah, like that one there is fine. And then if you look at the finished product, that's before I did the back. Like nothing maintained. That's the back done, it's finished. And then you'll see the side, and that's the side. So if we just stop there on photo 15, he has his fence recessed back off the property line. So I went one more board above because the height of my ground elevation, I went from the lowest point, 8 feet with an 8-foot level, and I'm about 19 inches from this swale to the bottom of the level. And it just did not work out from our end, looking at all those blocks. If he would have probably built it on the property line, we wouldn't have saw it. But that's the only reason I went up one more section of fence. And then if you look at, keep going, right there. So that's an 8-foot level, on level, and you can see the height difference in the ground elevation. So if you go one more picture, I do believe, that's the height from the lowest point of where I put the level. I didn't even go to the highest point. The highest point was probably about 23 inches, but I went from the lowest point, and that's a 6-foot level. So I'm one board above his with the ground elevation. So I would not see any of that, and I just wanted, defeats the point of having a privacy fence when you see other things behind it as an obstacle.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Was there any other comments? Sorry, from staff, I couldn't remember. There's just planning?
Yeah, and public works, no comments.
No comments? Okay. This is an application that was deferred from our previous meeting that was brought back as a result of a discrepancy, I guess, or a doubt as to the accuracy of the measurements. So I believe staff went back and measured it once or twice, according to the report. and they revised the application. It was recirculated to the public, and then the proper numbers were put on it. And that 2.32 meters that it's referred to, I believe, is the highest point throughout the whole fence, but there's various elevations from the drawing, as I understand. So it goes up and down a little bit, but the highest would be, I guess it's the corner post that closest to the house, the 2.32, is that correct? Maybe Fiona can answer that one.
Yeah, through you, Chair, the 2.32 is at its highest point and it's closest to the front lot line, so at the front of the house.
Okay.
And that's where there is relatively flat land as well.
Okay. So from there, it drops off up and down slightly to the back corner and then up to the, I guess it's the south lot line at 1.87. Okay. Any questions from the committee members? No? Oh, Dylan?
Now, hi, through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant, I was just curious as to whether or not there had been any further communications between you and your neighbor from the last Committee of Adjustment meeting on the matter. It was a fairly contentious.
Yeah, it was.
Sort of. It was fairly contentious at our last meeting, so I'm just wondering if there's been any
No communication.
discussions.
No communication at
None.
all. Nothing at all.
So not initiated by you or your neighbors.
No.
Okay.
Okay. No further questions?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, Mr. Chair. One more. And so, just so I'm clear, when it came to the height, you basically built, taking into consideration the slope of the ground in order to not see your neighbor's fence. Is that correct? So that's why it sort of just naturally sort of became higher than 2 meters. Is that
Yes,
correct?
absolutely. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Maybe we'll have you just stay there just in case there's other questions from committee first. None? No? Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak to this matter?
Yeah, so I'd like to invite Bill, I think, who wanted to speak first.
Could we just get your name and address for the record? I know you spoke last time, but I am going to put a time limit, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, just because we've got a full agenda here. So give us the Coles notes.
You have to hear me speak, okay? I want to answer Dylan's question, if you don't mind. We haven't spoken for 2 years. He needs to know some background. The main reason for that is because for 20 years he's been saying, I am 4 feet on his property. I've been listening to that crap for 20 years. So finally, he's pulling a string for a fence. He's on my property. I'm looking at it. What am I going to do? Let him build the fence? 18 inches in at the back corner, which relates to 4 feet in the front? Why don't you ask him that question, Dylan? And then I decide to go pull a string Saturday morning. Wouldn't you know it? He's got a surveyor there. And what do you think the surveyor says? I hate to be right, but the survey says, Bill, you're right. Ask him. Ask him if he's wrong. It's a side. There's going to be some questions in here. I hope you would write them down. I'll give you a few seconds, okay? I think we just need to take a step back here and allow me to put all of this into perspective. We're talking about an application to allow for a higher fence height than the bylaw requirement states. I know you guys go over that all the time, but I have to state that. Question 1, did the applicant know that the town of Grimsby had a bylaw in reference to fence height? It's my first question I want you to ask him. Number 2, the answer should be affirmative to that, so it then begs the next question. Why did you not follow it? This application is not before you asking for permission prior to building the fence, but after the fact, as we are all or should be aware of. This fact alone should be cause enough to deny the application. Nevertheless, having said that, I would suggest that the application is somewhat unique to this committee, which tends to spend more time on more important issues affecting the town. To support this comment, let me give you an example. I went back 5 years on the Committee of Adjustment. That had to do with a request for, and there was only one fence issue before you. That had to do with a request for a 3.05 meter fence height for some houses on Main Street that were to the west of the new Brandhaven development. That was approved and totally understandable. Mr. Antonides and Mr. Bailey were there. Now, during my February 21st meeting, I provided hard copy information. Let me say it again, hard copy information confirming that the actual fence height at its highest point was 2.29 meters, whereas the application asked for a maximum height of 2.15. Yet, in spite of this information, Fiona Main's answer was yes to when the chair says to her, and I quote, "You're still of the opinion that you are supporting this request." Rather than saying, in light of the information being provided tonight, I might want to reserve my judgment, she decides to base the information provided by the applicant and to scout, in effect, any proven shown information that I provided. It's inexcusable. I would like to know, Mr. Chair, from the applicant, how he arrived at the 2.15 measurement height. It's question number 3. Now, let me just say a couple of things about the last meeting. I have to say this. I would like to point out what I believe are to be a series of missteps and some concerns that I have with respect to the last meeting. The fact that on the application form it says, at the hearing, the applicant will be required to speak to why it is not possible to comply with the zoning and to provide adequate reasons as to why the variance or relief should be granted. The fact that the chair asked the applicant to come forward and in his own words, would you like to outline the reasons for the request and your response to the letters we received or the letter? The applicant didn't speak to this. I need an answer. That's question 4. The fact that no one questioned the applicant as to why he did not seek permission. In other words, why did he not apply for a minor variance before he built the fence? Another question the applicant needs to answer. The fact that when we pointed out Walter Basic, the Assistant Director of Planning, did not approve the memorandum, whereas all 4 of the other applications that night on February 21st were signed. I don't know if it's a procedure or whatever. Am I missing something? I would love an answer why it's not signed by Mr. Basic. The fact that Fiona Main was floundering at best in searching for answers. All you have to do is look at what she had to say. The measurements were confirmed by the applicant at 2.15 meters. The chair mentions the credibility of this amongst other things. Again, she says, I wasn't aware of the other height based on what we were told. In answer to a Dylan Bailey pertinent question, she says, I am honestly not entirely sure as this is my first time dealing with this. Given the situation, I'd be comfortable going to measure again. Again? They never went out in the first place.
Okay, Bill, 30 seconds. Get to the point. I know, but you had the previous meeting too, so summarize it.
Okay.
We've heard you. So
okay, all right, let me summarize.
We've been fair.
Okay, let me summarize it. I proved to you last committee meeting that it's 2.29 meters versus 2.15 that he's asking for. Ask Mr. Basic to come up here and reconfirm to you what he said the procedural was. He said, and I'll just read this, the facts provided by Walter Basic, who says in his own words, town staff did not go out and measure the height of the fence. We rely on the applicant. We know there was a dispute and we wanted to confirm. From a procedural perspective, out of his mouth, if a variance is received for a 2.15 meters and the height is actually higher than that, then the fence will actually be non-compliant with the requirements of the zoning bylaw, and we'd be required to ask the applicant to either make the fence compliant from an enforcement perspective, make the fence compliant, or to apply for a variance to legal the height. A variance, not a what's the word? What do you apply for tonight?
Deferral?
No, not a deferral, the revision.
Revision.
That shouldn't even be allowed tonight. One last thing, you were awaiting for a verification, according to this gentleman here who deferred it, to verify my measurements. If my measurements are accurate, we have to go by what Walter says. It's denied. I got more to say, but you won't let me. So that's it.
So if you can respond, Walter, to that comment. I think it's regarding the deferral.
That comment is accurate. I did say that.
Thank you.
But that comment was in response to a specific question. And the specific question was, from the committee, if we decide to approve an application for a measurement that's incorrect, what would the options be? And that's what I responded to. However, that's not what happened. The committee didn't decide whether or not 2.15 was the appropriate number, they didn't decide on the application based on a 2.15 number. The committee said there appears to be a dispute. Let's defer a decision on this application until we find out what the actual measurements are. And it was on the instructions of the committee that staff went out and conducted measurements of the fence. So third party, as instructed by the committee, with both the applicant and the neighbor present on two separate occasions. From what I understand, I wasn't there. And the applicant decided to amend the application based on the revised measurements, and here we are. And that's my response to that specific comment. So procedurally, it's not incorrect.
Right, okay. Thank you. A couple of questions raised. I don't know if you want to respond or not regarding if you knew there was a height restriction, and if so, why didn't you apply? I mean, we've had a few cases where people do it before or without permission, and they're caught by a neighbor usually and brought back, and they're forced to comply. But that's not one of the tests that we're dealing with. So the question is, had this not been built already, would this be considered a minor variance, or would it meet the 4 tests? I mean, I went out and met with both owners today just to hear both sides of it and just to view the fence. Good fences do make good neighbors. I'm not sure why you'd want it reduced in height to see more of his backyard, to be honest. But that's up to you. You have a right to object. Anyways, I'm just offering that as a comment.
Can I make one more comment?
Yep.
You know, you're throwing me off here a little bit because of the 5 minutes. But let me just say this. His backyard's higher. Okay?
Yeah, no,
Let's say
100%.
this. But, you know, he shows these pictures. He didn't even explain which fence was mine. So for the audience here, the beautiful fence was mine. You know, the crosshatch, that was mine. What bearing that has on his fence, I don't know. Let's think about it. The fence is 91 feet long, okay? According to his measurements, and we know about his measurements. But 91 feet long, a third of that fence is between the two houses, which are 18 feet apart. Now, are you going to tell me that 30 feet there between the two houses, he has a drop like he has at the back of the house? No. So at the back of the house, you know, it's higher. It ain't higher between the houses. And I got to walk, you saw it today, Kevin. I got to walk through my little alleyway like this, looking at this for the rest of my life? Come on.
Okay.
You know, it's a no-brainer. That's all I want to say.
No problem. We heard you. Thank you. Any questions from the committee members now?
No.
Any other comments? We did give a month for you to perhaps come up with a compromise. I did walk on both sides. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the back fence height. It is up against a hedge. I know there is a neighbor, I don't know if she was going to speak at all.
She's here, but she's not.
Okay, that's fine. But it is up against a hedge, nowhere near her house, not visible. It looks pretty nice from the backyard, and you can't see it from her backyard. I agree, along the house, it makes no difference, the height. I don't know if that was something you were willing to compromise on, reducing one board between the two houses, but I would say that I'd have to agree with having a higher fence because of the elevation from that side of the property. It does, otherwise, why would you want to see him in his backyard? He's going to be elevated. He's 2 feet higher than you. That's just my opinion, a personal opinion, but anyways, that's all my comments to add on this one. Anybody else want to speak to this that's affected by this? No, if not, then do I have a motion and the reasons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a motion. A motion resolved that minor variance application A3223 for 18 Park Road South to legalize the privacy fence as existing to a maximum privacy fence height of 2.32 meters in a residential zone, whereas 2 meters is permitted as per section 4.36 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, be approved because it meets the intent of the official plan, meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, is desirable and minor in nature.
Seconder, Adam? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye, or raise their
Aye.
hands. Opposed, if any? So noted, was carried. Thank you for attending. There is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Thank you very much. Dalhara, the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just share my screen again. Okay, so the next application is A0424 for 215 Mountain Road. The purpose of this application is to construct an accessory building and to permit a maximum height of 4.36 meters for an accessory building with a flat roof, whereas 3 meters is permitted. This is an image of the site plan, which was circulated on the notice of hearing, a closer image of it as well. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions on site. This is what is proposed for the site. And these are the agencies who offered comments. And I'll just summarize the comments for you. The Niagara region has provided comments to say that a septic permit was issued for the property in 2019. No defects were observed with the sewage system at the time of inspection. The accessory building shall not be used for human habitation, or the sewage system will have to be upgraded to accommodate that use. Building will meet minimum building code setbacks to the existing sewage system. Public Works offered the following.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Is that better?
Public Works offered the following comment. They have no conditions.
You'll be given an opportunity at a later point. We're just going to read the application and then any correspondence first, and then we'll open it up to the public. Okay.
Public Works staff note that the applicant already has an open grading performance bond that will remain open as part of the new proposed work. Public Works will not require revised grading plan as there is already one currently on file from the original construction works. It's outside the MTO, Ministry of Transportation permit control area, so no comments from the MTO. And Grimsby Power and NPCA had no comments either. Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is the owner or their agent here wish to speak to this application? Anybody? No owner?
I'm the agent on this application through the chair. My name is Ava Barnett, and I am representing the owners of 215 Mountain. I do have a short presentation if you'd like to, I can walk you through that.
Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
I sent that into committee if you're able to share.
Yes, just give me a minute, sorry. Eva, can you just tell me when, because I think it was a few days ago, right?
That's right. I don't have the exact date. I sent it in. It was probably last Friday, either Thursday or Friday.
Okay. Yes, okay, I got it. Just a minute.
Thank you.
Okay.
So this is the proposed site plan, and you can see there's an existing two-story dwelling in green, and the proposed one-story accessory structure is kind of tucked in behind there, so that's a good visual. Next slide, please. And here are some color renders of what this will look like. The south elevation and the north elevation. You can see it's accessory to the hot tub and the proposed pool. And if we go to the next slide, we're seeking relief for the height regulation to go from 3 meters to 4.36 meters. And the 4.36 meter height isn't consistent across the entire accessory structure. It's more to the one side, a little closer to the 3 meter regulation on the other side there. If we can go to the next slide. Here's just an illustration of how the proposed accessory structure is kind of tucked in behind the existing dwelling. And as planning had noted, the visual impact of this location really is minimized. There's quite a distance. It's quite a setback from all the lot lines for the proposed structure. And if we go to the next slide, we do believe that this meets the 4 tests, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members first? So I gotta wait till they come back. I can't see Dylan, so. Oh, technical difficulties? Okay. Any questions, Fabia or Adam? No? None?
No, no.
No? Is there anyone,
Presented.
is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak? Sure. As long as we can hear you, though. To be fair, we can't hear you then. We can wait for a sec, but that way we can hear your question.
I'll be asking the questions.
Can we just get your name and address for
I'm
the record?
Kathleen Mrazowicz, next door neighbor to this house.
Okay.
And my question is the drainage. Where are they letting their drainage go at the present moment? Yeah.
Did you have another question? We'll ask them
Oh,
that.
there's many.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm asking, where is their drainage going now?
Okay. What else?
Answer that, and then I'll
them-
I'll have the next question.
I'm going to have them answer that, but they can answer all the questions. Totally.
I'm the homeowner, so I just would like to speak to that. I don't think we're here about current drainage. We're here for the new property, which is on the opposite side of that home.
But we'll have you answer all the questions if you'd like, but we're going to have her list them all first. So just go through your list, and then we'll pass them on.
Well, I'm talking about the drainage that they have presently from their home is, first of all, it was right into my tree line. Then I had to talk to the town of Grimsby. They sent some character over and telling me that I shouldn't complain. The trees need water. Well, I know what I could have said, but I thought it, and I'm sure you can all think it yourself, what I was thinking to tell them. But anyway, I'm upset. Water coming every which way. Now, they've got a pool. Where are they draining that? They've got these buildings. Where are they draining that? And plus, their swale, it should not be a man-made swale. It should be a natural swale. And why not have the swale go through the middle of their property instead of the property line? which interferes with the neighbors, as I see the neighbors are having trouble with their fences because of the swale. And I don't want that. I have it, but I don't want it. It has to stop. And they're planning to build more buildings, and they're not talking about where they're sending their water. They're just being happy building. And we have to take it, and I oppose that. And I would like that to be in the minutes of the meeting, that I oppose the whole procedure without proper detailing of runoff water that they have to provide themselves, that the city isn't going to give it to them. They have to buy it. But where are they going to drain it when they need to clean it? To me, because my property is lower? No, thank you. I'll stand here and wait for what they got to say. Might have more questions.
Do you have any more questions?
I'll wait till she answers.
Where is she? Melissa, were you going to answer that, or your agent?
Yeah, no problem. So we're here, obviously, all of our grading was approved by the city, and it was confirmed, and it was done based on the
I didn't
recommendations.
see a copy of any of that.
Hold on, let her answer.
Sorry.
So I don't think we're required to give that, but we're not here about the current drainage. We're here for the other property, which that entire structure is on the opposite side of our house, and those neighbors are totally okay and have no issues with drainage. So I'm not sure why this is an issue when it's on the opposite side of the property from where you're currently.
We're talking about the present house right now.
Do you have a drainage plan that was filed when you took a building permit, I'm assuming?
For like our original building permit?
Yeah.
No.
I would assume our builder did it. I'm sorry. We got occupancy, everything was approved, the grading plan was approved, there was no issues.
So there's still an outstanding bond, though, according to the Public Works. So the works isn't done yet, or the bond hasn't been released. There was just a comment in the Public Works memo as part of the package that you would have received. So is there some out? Is it,
You get a package?
they got it? Oh, so there is.
Sorry, I didn't get the package, so it might have gone through Simple, our SNPL, our design firm.
Ava can comment on that. So there's a memo from Public Works. We'll read it for you if you'd like. It's just it's regarding stormwater, because I know it's an issue up there because everything's flat. But
Yeah, it always is. Yeah, it's not just our property, it's all over.
right.
There is an open grading performance bond. That's why Public Works didn't ask for another one.
So in other words, if work's required as a result of this new activity, that would be held back until this is closed off or built to the satisfaction of the town. So the town still has the power to enforce it if they have to, if there's an issue. Is that the?
That's right. There's a
Okay.
grading plan already on file with the town. That's correct.
Okay.
Can I have a copy of it?
She's going to read it.
Yeah, so Public Works
I would
provided.
I would like a copy of it to read.
She's
Take it out.
going to read it first, and then you can have a copy.
Thank you.
Are we allowed to just hand out copies to all residents without going through Freedom of Information? Like, it's our personal grading plan. I'm just curious to know what the requirements are.
No, we're talking about the memo. The memo's online. It's already posted,
okay,
so
yeah,
she's just
no.
going to read it. Thanks.
Sorry, I thought you meant the grading.
No.
So this is the memo that was published with the agenda, which can be found online. So Public Works offered the following comment. Public Works staff note that the applicant already has an open grading performance bond that will remain open as part of the new proposed work. Public Works will not require revised grading plan as there is already one currently on file from the original construction works.
Thank you. Any other questions?
That is online. I do not have that facility, so I would like a letter.
We'll get you a copy of that memo.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No?
No?
I'm disappointed in the system. Thank you.
Well, we haven't done anything yet.
That's what I mean.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee members as a response to that? If not, any other members of the audience that'd like to speak to this application? No? If not, then do I have a motion? Oh, you had a question. Sorry, I missed that.
Yes, to the applicant. The original grading plan did actually have this accessory building on it.
So it had a permit open for an accessory building, but it has changed with our needs and our children, like what we've actually done. So we had deferred the permit and paid the extension on it. And then we just reiterated after we thought through the process and changed the overall aesthetic of it.
Okay, thank you.
So Walter, oh, he's left.
You went to get the printout.
Oh, okay. So that would be my questions, kind of follow up. So it would be amended to reflect the new building, which, oh, wait, Walter's coming here. So Walter, I'm assuming it'll be amended to reflect the new building that's being proposed, the drainage plan. If there's an open plan, it would be amended to reflect the new building that's being proposed.
In reading the memo, through you, Chair, in reading the memo, it states that Public Works will not require a revised grading plan. And they will work with the existing grading plan. Because the key is the perimeter of the site. So as long as the perimeter of the site isn't changed, then the drainage patterns are intended to go away from the buildings to the perimeter. So the perimeter, wherever the water goes, the water should behave the same way once it gets there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Adam? No further questions. Do I have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion is resolved that minor variance A04-24 for 215 Mountain Road to permit a maximum height of 4.36 meters for an accessory building with a flat roof, whereas 3.0 meters is permitted as per section 4.18, table 2, and zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, be approved without conditions. The application meets the four tests. It meets the intent of the official plan, the intent of the zoning bylaw. It's desirable for the development of the land and is minor.
Thank you. Seconder? Dan? Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye or raise their hands. Opposed, if any? It was carried. So there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Thank you for attending. Good night. Okay, the next application, minor variance 145 Main Street West. That's application A0524. Dilhara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of an addition to the existing dwelling, to permit a minimum side yard setback of 1.223 meters, whereas 1.8 meters is permitted, and to permit a maximum lot coverage of 27.2%, whereas 25% is permitted. This is a copy of the site plan that was circulated in the notice as well. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions on site. And these are all the agencies that responded. And I'll just summarize the comments for you now. So planning staff have no objections. The variances are considered minor in nature and meet the four tests. Heritage staff are supportive of the variance. Staff find the addition to be compatible, distinguishable, and subordinate to the heritage resource, and note that this new addition will further encourage the building's long-term retention. Public Works had one condition regarding the parking. Public Works had one condition, that is that town staff will require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating all stormwater runoff is contained within the respective lot and will not negatively impact nor rely on neighboring properties. NPCA had the following comments. NPCA notes that the subject property is impacted by the Niagara Escarpment, which is a hazard slope. It also notes that a work permit will be required for a proposed addition, and at the time of permit, the NPCA will require more detailed design drawings, including elevations and confirmation if a basement is proposed. And they may require a geotechnical report as well at that time to address the proposed development in relation to the toe of the slope. Some changes to the site plan will also be needed at that time to show erosion sediment control measures, as well as a setback from the toe of the slope to the proposed deck and the addition. The region had the following comments. The subject property is impacted by the region's natural environment system and significant woodland. The property is also partly mapped as part of the provincial natural heritage system. As such, these features are considered key natural heritage features. Niagara official plan policy requires the completion of an environmental impact study when development or site alteration is proposed within 120 meters of a property with key natural heritage features. However, policy also states that environmental impact study requirements can be scoped if the proposed development is minor and is not anticipated to have a negative impact on the natural environment system, which the staff are satisfied that this is, provided that erosion and sediment control fencing and best management practices are implemented during construction. Over to you, Mr.
Thank you. Is the owner or their agent ready to come forward? We just get your name and address for the record.
Is it on? There you go. Okay, thank you. My name is Lisa Roy. I'm the agent for the owners who are in attendance. My address is 3201 6th Avenue in Vineland. I guess the reason for the variance is because we wanted to get the best possible outcome for the owners for what they wanted for their addition. It's a very small house as it is, and there wasn't many places to go. It's a fairly small lot, as most of the lots in that area are. So anyway, we just wanted to get maximize the floor plan for the owners. So that's why we asked for the minor variances of the setback, which is all behind the existing house, and also the lot coverage, which is just a little bit more than what the requirement is.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members first? No? No? Oh, there's Dylan. He's back. Any questions, Dylan?
No, not on this application. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I apologize.
No problem. All right. Anyone in the audience like to speak to this application? No? What's that? Did you say which application? I thought no questions on this application. We're on A.
145 Main Street.
Yeah. A0524 145 Main Street West, the addition at the back.
Oh, I had one more thing to say.
Yep, no problem.
I'm in communication with the NPCA, and we have a lot grading plan already. It's underway. You've got a copy of it so far. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Any proposed fence? 7 feet, 8 feet? No?
I don't think
right.
so.
Come here first. Anybody in the audience like to speak to this application? No? You've met with your neighbors, no issues? Perfect. Do I have a motion then on this application? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it resolved that minor variance application A0524 for 145 Main Street West to permit a minimum side yard setback of 1.223 meters, whereas 1.8 is permitted as per Table 11, Section 7.1 in Zoning Bylaw 1445 as amended, to permit a maximum lot coverage of 27.2%, whereas 25% is permitted as per Table 11, Section 7.1 and Schedule 15 in Zoning Bylaw 1445 as amended, be approved with one condition, that the town staff require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating all storm runoff is contained within the respective lot and will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. And I recommend it be approved because it meets the 4 tests.
Thank you. Seconder? Adam? Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any? Was carried. So there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Thank you for attending. Have a good evening. next application is A0424, 63 Elm Tree Road West. Dilhara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of a single detached dwelling and to specifically permit the erection of a building as a dwelling on a lot where another dwelling already exists, whereas zoning bylaw does not permit the erection of any dwelling on a lot where another dwelling already exists. This is an image of the plan for the site that we received and which was circulated with the notice. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions of the site. And these are the agencies who have provided correspondence, and I will summarize that for you now. Planning staff require 3 conditions for this application. Number 1, that requires the new dwelling to be located within the existing cluster of buildings currently on the lot. Number 2, that the existing dwelling shall be removed following the occupancy of the newly constructed dwelling. And number 3, the applicant enter into an agreement with the town in accordance with Section 45, 9.1 of the Planning Act to implement Condition 1 and 2. Public Works has no comments, but they have one condition, which is town staff will require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. NPCA had the following comments. The NPCA notes that the subject property is impacted by the 40 Mile Creek and its associated floodplain, as well as Upper 40 Mile Creek wetland complex and its associated buffer. The additional dwelling that is proposed is away for the NPCA's regulated features, therefore they have no concern. However, they are recommending that erosion and sediment control measures are used during the construction of the additional dwelling to the west side to ensure nothing gets into the watercourse and wetlands and to ensure that there is no erosion. The region has the following comments. Regional staff have inspected the property and have listed 4 conditions. Number 1, that the existing dwelling be demolished upon issuance of the occupancy permit for the proposed new dwelling subject to this application. Number 2, that the applicant owner submit a Stage 1 archaeological assessment completed by a licensed archaeologist and receive acceptance from the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism for the archaeological assessment. If the ministry requires further archaeological work to be completed prior to acknowledging this report, these reports must also be submitted to and acknowledged by the ministry to the satisfaction of Niagara region prior to clearance of this condition. No demolition, grading, or other soil disturbances shall take place on the subject property prior to the issuance of a letter from MCM through Niagara region, confirming that all archaeological resource concerns that have met licensing and resource conservation requirements. Number 3, that the owner be informed of the following advisory clause. Should deeply buried archaeological remains or resources be found during construction activities, all activities impacting archaeological resources must cease immediately, and the proponent must notify the Archaeology Programs Unit of the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism and contact a licensed archaeologist to carry out an archaeological assessment in accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act and the standards and guidelines for consultant archaeologists. In the event that human remains are encountered during construction, all activities must cease immediately, and the Niagara Regional Police, as well as the Cemeteries Regulation Unit of the Ministry of Public and Business Services, must be contacted. In situations where human remains are associated with archaeological resources, the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism should also be notified to ensure that the site is not subject to unlicensed alterations, which would be a contravention of the Ontario Heritage Act. Number 4, that the existing septic tank for the existing dwelling to be demolished is decommissioned, and that a new septic system meeting Ontario Building Code requirements is applied for and installed to service the new dwelling. And Grimsby Power and Ministry of Transportation had no comments. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is the owner or their agent here this evening that'd like to speak to this application? Would you like to come forward? We can get your name and address for the record. Thank you.
So my name is Frank Maraca, and the address is 63 Elm Tree Road West. So we're proposing again to build a house and demolish one of the houses there.
So what's the history of this, how two houses got on this property? I understand it's legal non-conforming already with the two houses?
Well, they've been there for one 60 years and the other one over 100 years. So might not be conforming with today's laws, but they should have been, I think, grandfathered in for that amount of time that had been up. Now, what she read from the region, I did not hear everything, all the conditions that they're asking for, and I didn't receive a letter from them. So I would like to go over that, but any outstanding condition that I should know?
Maybe they usually put that in as a standard clause about if you find archaeological remains, you have to report it. I was going to ask Walter that. Is that a standard for a single-family house permit even? Because I know we get this every time, and I can't remember what the response has been, if that's a standard that they're putting in every time?
Yeah, it depends on, they have information about where the highest potential for archaeological finds is where there's potential for, higher potential for archaeological finds, and typically it's along river valleys and along rivers. So they don't ask for it everywhere, they ask for it where there's a high potential. If that answers your question.
It does.
Sorry. There is a creek there, but the house would be at least 300 feet away from the creek. Another option that we might consider is to rebuild where the one that we're going to demolish, in once it's demolished.
So is there a reason why? Is there a tenant in that house now?
Not right now. I'm at the point where I got to decide whether to renovate or to build new.
Right.
And I'm trying the latter.
Okay. So Walter, are you satisfied that the third house would be demolished once the other one's, like, is this agreement that he would have to enter into enough to ensure that the second house, the third, if he builds the third, this old house is removed? Is that the town protected that way through this agreement?
Yes. So it's an agreement that we've used several times in the past, and it's been effective, and it's registered on title, and it comes with deposit and all that, right? And also, I just want to respond to the comment about rebuilding in the existing location. That would be our preference. Initially, we didn't support the application. However, we would support it if it's in the same location or in the cluster of buildings. We're concerned that moving this residential use farther into what's currently actively farmed isn't consistent with the official plan or the intent of the official plan. So that's just one thing I wanted to bring up. And but we would be supportive of a location within. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the exact location of the existing house, but within that cluster of buildings would be supportable from our perspective.
Thank you. So, and that's one of the options you considered?
Yes, so it is an option. We also wanted to start from scratch because you're dealing with old septic system, you're dealing with all kinds of things.
So the way the variance is worded, though, or the request, there's no control over where he puts that third house, right? Other than through the condition that the new dwelling be located within the existing cluster, which isn't really defined what a cluster is, but of buildings currently on the lot. So there's no real definition, like he could put it 300 feet back and over.
I wouldn't consider that within the existing, and then the operative word is within.
Okay.
So you have a group of buildings.
Yep.
So within that, the boundaries of the existing group of buildings.
It would be.
Yeah.
Right. But the way it's showing on here wouldn't be considered in the cluster either. The one where it's showing the new house over here.
Yeah, that would be outside of the cluster.
Right. So they are trying to tie you down as to where they're willing to accept the location of the new house, in other words. That's just so you know, I'm just kind of clarifying it with.
So the first proposal was to build it where I showed there. And so the response is no to that location? Or is there conditions attached according to?
No, they're saying build within the existing cluster of houses. So ask Walter cluster of buildings. So ask Walter what he thinks was within the cluster. This one, the sketch you provided isn't within the cluster. So just so you're aware, I'm just pointing it out.
So if we leave it the way it is there, where do we stand?
Right? If you're saying replace on or about where the old house is, they'd have no problem with that. But that means you're demolishing it first, and then
if we go to the location that I showed there?
They're not in support of that.
Who's that, the region?
The town, planning department. That's one of the conditions that they're requesting. Now, the committee may decide otherwise, but the recommendation from planning staff is that it stay within the existing cluster of houses. Buildings, I keep saying houses, buildings.
Well, that could go also to the west side where the other driveway is, right? So which is about 150 feet from the existing old house.
All I'm saying is it's very subjective, what he's saying.
There was a barn there.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee members first?
Dylan? For you, Mr. Chair, yeah. I just, sort of reading the staff report, and I just sort of want to be clear if the applicant is aware of those three conditions in order to make in order for it to meet the four tests and in order for it to have the support of town staff. I just want to be clear that those three would be known, that it be built within the cluster of buildings that the second one that the other dwelling would be demolished. That is something that the applicant would entertain, and then of course there's a variety of other conditions as well. Because I think it's a very different discussion for the committee, depending on what the applicant is willing to entertain.
We're just putting up the overhead sketch.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I just want to make it clear so the applicant understands what the position is. There is the barn that was removed, right?
Right.
And there's a new barn built in behind the old barn, right? So when you drive in, the house is on the left-hand side.
Right.
So, but there's room beside where that house is?
Yes.
Or even where the barn used to be. So anywhere between where the barn used to be and where the existing second house is, anywhere in that area would be acceptable.
Okay, understood.
All right?
We can do that.
Okay, question, Dan?
Through you, Chair. The applicant has mentioned that you might entertain the idea of tearing the house down first, the existing house, and then building, if you're going to build on where that existing footprint is. And if that is the case, I'm just curious if there's merit to this application at all, that they're asking that the existing house can be there while they build and then it is torn down. And I only ask because well, we're dealing with that variance, and it might be unnecessary, if I'm correct, and there are a lot of conditions that come with that, being the Stage 1 archaeological assessment and all the other ones. So I guess I have two questions. One would be to the applicant, if you're sure what you want to do, and then also to Walter, would the archaeological assessment happen no matter what, or only because it's been through a variance?
Walter first.
It's my understanding that if I'll speak to the archaeological assessment component. If the construction is within previously disturbed areas, then those conditions wouldn't necessarily be required. However, I think it's still prudent to have conditions that say, if you find something, let either the police know or let the Ministry of Culture know. So those are appropriate.
Well, I'm referring, sorry, is that okay, Mr. Chair? I'm referring to the Stage 1 archaeological assessment by a licensed archaeologist, not necessarily the standard clause about whether deeply buried archaeological remains be found.
Yeah. Okay. I can't speak for the region and whether or not they would still require that condition, but I would caution removing it. My recommendation would be to leave the condition in, and if they no longer require it based on where the new location of the house would be, based on our discussions here, then they could easily waive that condition if it's applied.
Thank you. So in other words, if you demolish the house first, and to Dan's point, you don't need the variance, means you don't
So I wanted to speak to that one also.
Okay.
Sorry, that was the second one. So
Okay.
First was the archaeology. The second issue with regard to the agreement, they would still need an agreement because once you remove the legal non-conforming status, we're concerned that they would lose the status of legal non-conforming use. So it's out of an abundance of caution, let's say, I would still make a decision on the application. The application was made. All the money was spent on the application fee by everybody reviewing the application. So it's not like we would say, never mind, we don't need an application, so we'll give you money back. That's not the case. So there's no benefit to not approving the application. But if that's the case, if they remove the building first, then we wouldn't need to do an agreement, but I would still do the variance.
Gotcha. Clear as mud. Any other questions from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this? Would you like to come forward and give us your name and address? And then you can respond if other questions get raised.
Hi, Diane Barafato, and we reside at 151 Sawmill, so it's just across the street. We're north. I just came because I was confused by the diagram and the wording of the variance. They didn't seem to make sense. So I wanted to understand what was being proposed. From our experience with our property, we are on Niagara Escarpment a little bit and then on Greenbelt. And so this land is not on Greenbelt.
Walter?
Yeah, the lands are within the Greenbelt plan, but they're outside of the Niagara Escarpment Commission Development Control Area.
So
and the Greenbelt plan requires the region official plan and the local official plan to be compliant with their plan.
Right.
So all of the policies that we discussed in our memos from the region and the town all address the Greenbelt plan also, and it's compliant.
So as a neighbor who's within, I think, X many feet of the proposed revision or variance, there's a couple of things. You showed a number of consultations. We've never that's not been shared, or I haven't received any copies. Is that something we could request so we understand what is being asked of? And, okay.
Yeah, we could provide you with a link to the agenda for tonight and all of the documents that were submitted from the various agencies, including the Conservation Authority, the town, the region, Public Works.
Okay.
They're all attached to the link. So you'll be able to read all of the documents that were submitted.
And so if our, when the decision is made where this new building is going to be built, will we be given the opportunity to comment on it as neighbors or not? Or is this the final thing going on here?
Yeah, this is the night the committee will make the decision, through you, Chair, sorry. I should be
It
speaking
just
to the
seemed
chair.
confusing that you were discussing a location that wasn't sort of actually clear, so it just
Yes.
seems very confusing.
Yes, so our position is that a new residential building on the property should not encroach into an agriculturally used portion of the property.
Right, which is...
The building should be within where the existing buildings are.
Right.
That's what our recommendation is. Don't put it way out there, put it where the existing buildings are.
Okay, so right now there are 2 houses and there are 2 other structures. So there's 4 buildings and 3, if I got it wrong.
There's a shed, 2 houses.
Okay, because
That's not a building.
okay, but it's still there. It's not completely removed. So.
That's a C-bin.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So, okay. So tonight, you'll have a clear idea of where that building would be if you were going to approve something tonight. Because while you're talking about it and showing this, nobody's pointing to exact locations. It's very confusing to understand what you're saying. So I'm just saying, for the sake of, people who are interested, it'd be very nice to see it placed on here. And so basically, if someone wants to build a new structure, they don't have to indicate size, height, anything at this stage, because that gets approved further down the road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the only concern that we had was with regard to the location of the building.
Yes.
The new location, as long as it's within the cluster of the existing
Right.
buildings, so not beyond where the existing buildings are. And I'm hoping that, through you, Chair, that if there's a concern with that from your perspective, if you could express that, or if you'd prefer to have it out in the tilled area, that, do you have a concern? That's one thing. But the committee will decide if they apply that condition.
Right.
Then in order to comply, the applicant will have to build within that area.
So from my
So you'll know
perspective,
generally where it is, but whether it's 20 feet to the left or right, it doesn't matter from our perspective.
If it's outside of the current cluster of buildings, it means it would then be on greenbelt lands.
The entire property is in the green belt.
Right, but
So,
right now
it's
this
in-
is
what our
technically
concern-
farm
Yes,
land?
what our concern
Yeah.
is that land would be taken away from active production.
Right.
That's all.
And again, I think the point I'm making there is if that's approved tonight, then you would assume it would be approved in future applications as well.
Not necessarily. Every application is dealt with on
But
its
you've
own
set a
merit.
precedent, correct?
Not necessarily, because every property is unique and everyone's dealt with on their own merits. But we hear your point. That's why we're going to put it up for you, and that's why we
Yes.
ask for public participation at these meetings. I mean,
Yes.
Generally speaking, it's not the same circulation time and distance as an official plan amendment or zoning. These are meant to be minor requests. So the period is shorter and the distance is shorter, but you are allowed to speak and your concerns are heard by the committee.
And the only reason I'm asking is quite a number of years back, my father, who owned the property at that time, did ask to have another structure just across the road from this spot, and that was refused on the grounds that it was greenbelt and farm property. And so I'm hearing something now that's contrary to a previous decision made by the planning department. So I'm just trying to understand how, I mean, we're right across the road, right? So I'm just really trying to understand if this is being approved. I'm not sure what's changed between those two applications.
Okay, well, I can't speak to the history of what's happened on your father's property, but we're not adding a net new dwelling on this property. They had two houses from many, many, many years ago.
Okay.
So they're non-conforming, so they don't conform, but the Planning Act allows you to continue that way as long as it continues that way. Okay? Because they existed legally prior to the bylaw coming into place, 60, 70, who knows how many years ago. So his request is to keep two houses on the property.
Yes.
But there's going to be three during construction. After the third is built, the second will be removed, so we're back to two houses on that. So we're not approving something that's not new.
Or in addition.
Exactly.
Okay, that
that's why there's all
clarifies
these,
it for me.
and that's why
Thank you.
there's all these conditions being proposed and attached to the decision if it's made.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
And it's government admin speak. It's supposed to confuse you.
Yeah, but, you know, it's nice to get some clarity as well when you're one-on-one with each other. Thank you.
And thank you. I apologize. I didn't quite understand what your question was, so I should have answered it, hopefully.
No, that's okay. But I'm sorry if I took.
No, thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak to this application? No? Committee members then, do I have a motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion would be to resolve that minor variance A07-24 for 63 Elmtree Road West to specifically permit the erection of a building as a dwelling on a lot where another dwelling already exists, whereas Section 4.7A of the zoning bylaw 1445 as amended does not permit the erection of any dwelling on a lot where another dwelling already exists, be approved with conditions. And I'll just actually mention that it passed the four tests, it meets four tests. And the conditions, I'll just read out briefly. Number one, that requires a new dwelling to be located within the existing cluster of buildings currently on the lot. Two, the existing dwelling shall be removed following the occupancy of the newly constructed building. Three, the applicant enter an agreement with the town in accordance with Section 45, bracket 9.1 on bracket of the Planning Act to implement Condition 1 and 2. Condition 4, town staff require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. 5, that the existing dwelling be demolished upon the issuance of the occupancy permit for the proposed new dwelling subject to the application. Number 6, as per was stated previously, that the applicant owner submit a stage 1 archaeological assessment completed by a licensed archaeologist and receive acceptance from the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism for the archaeological.
Yeah, the iPhone has to mute. They keep coming in and out. Do you want to just cover it briefly? She read them all.
Yeah, okay. So, and then the next one would be regarding the condition regarding deeply buried archaeological resources. And number 8, that the existing septic tank for the existing dwelling be demolished, is decommissioned, and that a new septic system meeting Ontario Building Code requirements is applied for and installed to servicing the new dwelling.
Thank you. A seconder?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
sorry.
just a friendly amendment. I think condition 2 and 5 are the same. So if we want to take one of those off.
2 and 5.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Adam, with that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So amended?
And then I'll second.
And he'll second it, all right? Seconder then. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Opposed, if any, was carried. Thank you very much. So there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding, and then there is a list of conditions attached to the approval. But Walter can share those with you in detail if you have any questions. Sure, yeah. Yeah.
It sounds to me like, especially the gentleman here brought out, that maybe for this, if we're going to build in the same cluster of home, in the same area, that there was no need for this variance. So we're spending...
Only if the second house is still there while you're building the third. Like, there's still room in that cluster to keep that second house there while you build, so it is still needed, like to Walter's point.
But if I'm going to build there, the house has to go first.
Adam?
Yeah, the variance was to allow the one of the existing homes to remain while you built the other one. Otherwise, usually they would have to be demolished first.
If I may. The variance gives flexibility, so the new house doesn't necessarily have to be built in the exact location of the existing house. So there's room still within that cluster to decide where you'd prefer to build that house. It doesn't have to be in the exact same location.
Important question, if you don't mind.
Yep.
If I'm going to build in that cluster there, why do I need an archaeology done?
Walter?
It's been disturbed many times.
Yeah, you may not, but that was
There's
Walter.
a septic system, there's a well, you name it. There was a barn.
Yep. Well, they may decide that. If they meet with Walter or you have a discussion with them, they may say it's redundant. I agree. They may say, it's not necessary, but they were covering themselves in case we approved it carte blanche and you ended up building in the back field, then they might come back and say, no, then you're going to need an archaeological study. So I agree with you. Then you can argue it with them as to why you wouldn't need it.
Thank you very much. So Walter will update me. Thank you.
Okay, so that's that one. So we're down to the last application this evening, and that is minor variance A0624 for 9 Carpenter Court. Delhara?
Thank you. So the purpose of this application is to allow for a basement secondary suite and associated entry door, to permit an entrance to the secondary unit in the basement via the side yard, whereas a side yard entrance is not permitted, and to permit a secondary suite located solely within a cellar basement, whereas secondary suites located solely within a cellar basement are not permitted. And this is an image of the site plan, which was circulated with the notice. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions on the site. And these are the agencies that offered any comments, which I will summarize for you now. So planning staff have no objections. The variances are considered minor in nature and meet the 4 tests. Public Works has one condition. They require confirmation that no side yard swale or existing drainage will be impacted by the proposed side yard entrance to the secondary basement suite. They go on to advise that only one service per lot is permitted. No additional service connections will be supported, and the secondary suite will need to be serviced through the existing services to the dwelling. The building department has the following comment. A minimum 860 millimeter clearance with path of travel is required from the proposed accessory dwelling unit exit door to an open public thoroughfare. Grimsby Power, Niagara Region, MPCA, and Ministry of Transportation have no comments. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is the owner or their representative or agent here this evening that would like to speak to this request?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and the committee members. And my name is Ravinder Singh, and I'm the authorized agent for 9 Carpenter Court. So as these are already been said. We are trying to create a secondary suite in the basement with an above grade door on the side yard. Both of them is not permitted, so we need a variance for that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee members first? Dylan, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if I didn't quite sort of understand the plan, but can I just get confirmation? So is there enough room, given a certain amount of side yard setback, for the proposed entrance and stairs? Because I didn't see that as part of the, or sort of, maybe that's sort of inherent in the variance, but is there, sort of between the two houses and the lot line, would there be the appropriate amount of space? It looked fairly tight when I saw it, so.
Sorry, is it the question to me or?
Sorry, no, that was to staff, actually. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
To our staff, Walter? Or is it Fiona on this one? Walter's going to answer.
Sorry, Walter.
Sorry, I was just helping the last applicant just before we got into this, so I'm just getting set up now. Thank you. It'll be a minute. So whatever is proposed is going to have to be compliant with the Ontario Building Code, which will deal with accessibility as well as you've read through the building department's comments. It has to be within a certain distance of a publicly accessible space like a road. So the answer is it'll have to be compliant with the Ontario Building Code, and if it can't be, then it can't be built.
Are there any issues that you see in the existing structure then that would prohibit it from being built? So maybe, I know Dilhara just skimmed over your report, but given the fact there's going to be people speaking to this application based on the correspondence, perhaps you can maybe summarize your analysis of this application. We've had a couple like this. So basement apartments are permitted as of right, as I understand, provided they're not wholly within the basement. Is that the correct interpretation?
Yeah.
Or you call it a cellar, but.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things. The provincial policy through the Planning Act does not permit local municipalities from prohibiting second and third dwelling units within existing dwellings. So every dwelling in Grimsby can have up to 3 dwelling units. So that's permitted as of right. The municipalities can regulate within reason certain things, like what we have in our zoning bylaw in terms of the entrance location and in terms of the location within the basement or cellar. Now, again, whatever is being proposed, like the intent is to make sure it's safe. And you have proper egress for when you have a bedroom, say, that in case there's a fire, we have interconnected fire alarm systems, and the windows are big enough to get out in case of a fire. So there are technical issues like that would have to be done and conformed and be made in conformity with the requirements of the Ontario Building Code. So an application will have to be made to our building department with proper plans that will be approved, and then that would be inspected through the inspection process, through the building permit application process. Now, our zoning bylaw says you can have it in a house, but we want the door in the back and not on the side or the front or where it's visible from the street. And again, that's just to maintain the appearance or consistent appearance of a street as detached homes. So that's really the intent of that door location requirement. And again, if there's a door on the side of a house, you still can't tell whether it's for a basement apartment, or whether it's an access point to a garage, or whether it's just an exit door from a room, like a laundry room on the side of the house. So we don't feel that a door on the side of the house necessarily, shines a spotlight on this property as being having more than one dwelling unit in it. So from that perspective, it's permitted as of right by the Planning Act. We can have reasonable restrictions in terms of parking and some of the things that are in our zoning bylaw, but we feel it meets the intent of the zoning bylaw. The other thing I wanted to mention is that oftentimes we run into situations where we discover illegally constructed second dwelling units, and that's what we're concerned with. In this particular case, the applicants are actually following the process. They're making sure it's legal. They're going to be submitting plans, and it's going to be reviewed on the basis of the conformity with the Ontario Building Code to ensure that the occupants of the second dwelling unit are safe in case there's a fire or other reasons. And so we're supportive on that basis. We're supportive of the application and commend the applicant for actually making the application, because we see so many situations where that doesn't actually happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Dylan?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. And Walter, just so I guess my question was more, should this pass and go through, and there needs to be stairs that are installed at the side of the house, and maybe I just sort of looked at it wrong, and maybe there's more space there. But if I'm assuming that there still needs to be made a side yard setback still needs to be maintained at our minimum level, even with the stairs, or can the stairs sort of encroach on that? And if that does happen as part of the building permit stage, would there then be a second variance required? I mean, I understand that there needs to be a pathway out to a road or out to an open area, but you see my point here, or am I?
Yes, I understand totally. If there's a requirement for stairs on the side, if they're below grade, that's considered part of the ground, and it's not, there's no setback requirement to that. Again, our Public Works comments, I was just quickly looking at them, our Public Works comments require that if that's the case, if a side entrance is proposed, and I'll just read it again, Public Works require confirmation that no side yard swale or existing drainage will be impacted by the proposed side yard entrance to the secondary basement suite. So that will have to be confirmed through the building permit process. So a building permit application, part of which requires the applicant, where necessary, to submit plans showing that drainage flows away from the house and doesn't impact neighboring properties. So that will have to be submitted with the building permit application to confirm that.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, now I think I understand some of the.
So in other words, the side yard doesn't change as a result of this request. The side yard would be the same as what exists.
Can I clarify something?
Yes.
So just to answer these questions, this entrance, what we are proposing is above grade, and we do meet all the setbacks, and all plans have already been submitted to the building department.
Thank you for that clarification. Any further questions from the committee members first? Dylan? Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I guess one question to the applicant and just a general comment. The first to the applicant, you've probably seen some of the letters that have been written and the comments made. One of them is, which seems to come up, is parking. I would just like to know sort of your stance or your comments on how you plan to, accommodate with the second interior dwelling, what you do to sort of mitigate, the parking impacts on the neighborhood.
So as per the building permit requirements, we require total three parking spots, which includes inside the garage also. And in this particular case, we do meet those requirements.
Okay. All right. So you don't feel that this is going to this won't negatively impact parking in the neighborhood then? That's all I just need to know. Okay. I guess my only other comment, Mr. Chair, is just sort of this. I must admit that as a committee member, I was surprised at some of the wording in some of these letters from neighbors. I found some of them to be rather prejudicial and rather negative. And sort of some of them reeked of sort of NIMBYism, which I find sort of sad in our town. So I look forward to hearing from some of them, but overall, some of the letters were very disappointing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dylan. I was going to comment along similar lines. I was rather disappointed in some of the wording that was used. I mean, we've all been tenants. Our kids are tenants. We all are a tenant before we own, and there's a lot of disparaging remarks about being a tenant and riffraff and crime and went on and on. So we're going to ask the members of the audience that like to speak to this application, but perhaps you can do so and stick with the requested variance and not use those terms, because I think that's not going to help your case. Let's just put it that way. So any other questions from the committee members first before we open it up?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. I just want to understand. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I want to understand the entrance into the proposed apartment. He said it's above grade. So is the door flush to the side of the building and then the stairs will be interior stairs?
So the door is above the ground, and we have one step going up with a landing, and then goes into the house, and then there is existing stairs which leads into the basement.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the committee members? Adam?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about it's 4.19 secondary suites, subsection D. The secondary suite is not located solely within the cellar. What's the intent of that?
Sorry, it's a question.
Excuse me.
No, it's for Walter. Walter's going to answer that.
Sorry, thank you. The intent of that requirement essentially is to make sure because a cellar is mostly below ground, and oftentimes the windows are too small in cellars to accommodate proper egress in case of emergencies. However, what differentiates between a cellar and a basement is 50% or more above grade, and a cellar is 50% or less below grade. So the intent is to make sure that proper ingress and egress is available for emergency purposes. But in our opinion, and it's something we're working on right now, is just to actually eliminate that requirement and rely on the building code solely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Water's on the way, Walter, just in case you got to speak again.
Okay, I'm done coughing.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak to this matter? Yep.
Honorable Mr. Chair, Kevin Antonitis, and dear council members of the town of Grimsby. here in person and here virtually. I was appointed to read this particular letter with the subject of great objection to the application. I am not privy to any other letters you've received from our community, but this subject line reads, and I'll underscore, objection to the application for a basement apartment at 9 Carpenter Court, Grimsby. This letter is undersigned by the residents of Carpenter Court and Escarpment Estates. We, the neighbors of Carpenter Court and Escarpment Estates, are deeply concerned about the proposal of a basement apartment at 9 Carpenter Court, Grimsby, for the following reasons, and for these reasons. Safety is at risk in our community. Our strained infrastructure will be further exposed. The unfavorable precedents that may be established, and the erosion of existing bylaws that make Grimsby a great place to live. Let me elaborate. On safety, Escarpment Estates and Carpenter Court, it's not just a regular suburb. It's a tight-knit community where families enjoy a sense of security. In particular, Carpenter Court comprises of 18 owner-occupied single-family homes with intentionally designed to be a low-density enclave, offering a safe place and space for our children to play outdoors and for neighbors to foster meaningful connections. Introducing a basement apartment at 9 Carpenter Court will disrupt this delicate balance and jeopardize the safety that defines our court, the community, and Grimsby at large. We are concerned that a basement apartment will only invite transient resident populations and may erode the sense of security that our community currently enjoys. Infrastructure, let's talk about that a little bit. Carpenter Court was planned only to support the aforementioned 18 single-family homes. The court was not designed to absorb the impact of an undetermined number of new residents on such a small footprint. There's already concerns with lack of street parking for guests, adequate clearance for snow plowing, and city garbage pickup. When walking a child to a local school bus stop, you'll find that the community is already in need of speed controls, traffic management, and other safety measurements of alike. Our court doesn't even have a sidewalk for kids to walk safely to and from their local bus stops. We dodge cars coming in and out of the court all the time when we take our little dogs for a walk, including newcomer Grover. I thought you might like that, Yelena. For those who live on Carpenter Court, we all find ourselves driving at a snail's pace when entering and leaving our lovable court for the genuine concerns of the number of kids that enjoy the odd game of basketball, soccer, or street hockey. The thought of increasing density on this tiny footprint and increasing it with transient residents not particularly familiar with their surroundings is very difficult for us to accept. The precedents that this may set, allowing a basement apartment in the neighborhood, can set a precedent and allow the future of our serene neighborhood and Grimsby as a whole be jeopardized. Floodgates will be opened with increased requests of this nature, and more concerning, the already mentioned unlawful addition of further units throughout the neighborhood. The low density safety that we've come to know and love will be gone. Bylaws. We don't believe that Ontario's Bill 23 was necessarily intended for our neighborhood, and the existing Town of Grimsby bylaws should be upheld in this decision. After all, it is these very bylaws that attracted existing families to the Town of Grimsby. Ignoring the bylaws is just, in our opinion, irresponsible and quickly could change the density, serenity, and the safety of our town. So we urge the committee to reject the application for the basement apartment at 9 Carpenter for all the above reasons. Mr. Chair, council members of this great town of Grimsby, if you can take one thing away from this letter, the residences of Carpenter Court and Escarpment Estates considers the plans of accommodating a basement apartment to be a major variance, not a minor one. The existing, long-time, law-abiding residents find these plans contrary to those that have attracted us to move our families to this town. We would expect our council members then, that are here today, come to our defense and save our town, particularly since we're not the ones breaking any bylaws. Sincerely undersigned residences of the community of Carpenter Court and Escarpment Estates. Thank you for your time and your ears.
Thank you, Mr. Benetti. Anyone else like to speak to this application? Yes, come on forward. We could also get your name and address for the record. Thank you.
I am Mrs. Calambra. I am a number 7. So if they put the basement apartment, the entrance will be on my side. So I have my kitchen window towards that side. So what happens? I can even open my window. First of all, now when I bought that house, no one else was built there. We didn't know that the bylaw will change. It will change our safety, our peace of mind there, the peace. We bought that house, me and my husband, and number 9. I sold that because I couldn't afford anymore. Well, now everything will change. I am by myself. I fear that somebody else, God knows who, comes over there, and then I can't open the window because somebody else, or other people go through. And the space between the two houses are 4 feet. The windows are very narrow, that nobody can escape from those windows. All right? Now, I am the oldest in the neighborhood. Everybody calls me Nona, because Nona means grandma. They all try to, protect me, because my husband passed away 3 years ago. So I am scared. Why I have supposed to see other people that now we are like a family there? Why you guys have to disrupt my peace there? Why? I can't understand that. Because I bought the house to be in peace. My husband said, we don't buy on the streets. We buy the house on the court. We are just a few people, and we can live in peace. Now they apply to build an apartment in the basement. Put yourself on my shoes. I am 84 years old. And in the 4 feet from each house. So what can happen? You can tell me what can happen later on. Do I have to fear all the time being in my house? When I came to this country, I sweat my blood to buy that house. Nobody gave me anything. I didn't ask anything to nobody. So I have the right to be in peace and safe. Don't take away from me my safety and my peace, please. Because there we are like a family. All the kids, we are around 18 kids playing on the court. There is no sidewalk. Don't add other people there. Like I said, I didn't buy on the street, but I bought on the court to be safer. So I rest my case and say, please use your conscience and your common sense. Please.
Thank you for those comments.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Come on up.
Hi, Nishan Devani, 5 Carpenter Court. So I am 2 houses down from the proposed proposal there. One thing I don't want to be redundant in what you guys asked for, Chair and Committee. But one thing I do want to note is that I do want to reiterate the comments and the sentiment that we are quite a bit of a family in this court. There's a lot of children in this court, and they play outside every day. And especially in the summer months when there's plenty of different games going on, whether it's tag or whether it's street hockey. And the safety is quite paramount for us, given that we don't have sidewalks and there isn't anywhere else, for these children to kind of walk and play, especially when we're walking them to school. It is a big concern for us. When, let's say we have 18 houses. Well, if we add 3, if you go 18 times 3, that kind of density in a court it's not sustainable. So if one of the houses in the court are allowed to have an extra dwelling, well, that means it basically says each house can have three, and then you go 18 times 3 in a small court like that, that's chaos. The parking situation, I don't know how that's even possible. And another thing I wanted to mention is I'm wondering, and maybe you can tell me, is why shouldn't an assessment with the building code be a prerequisite prior to approving this minor variance approval? So not only does this speak to the distance between the houses, but with all the total requirements, this should be considered prior to this potential build. And AEM has stated that the plans have been submitted for these approvals, including parking, but has the committee seen these approvals? And if this is just a submission, are we taking the word of the agent without the submission being fully approved? So, I feel like we should have concrete approvals before we go through this motion. And it also feels like we're putting the cart before the horse in this situation. And this is my first council meeting, and it seems like the well-educated and quite thorough planning committee, when they come to a decision, it seems to be like that is the decision. So I hope in this scenario, with all the previous points and concerns that we're having, that we take an extra step to make sure that, everyone's points are being listened to, and hopefully that there's a time to delay this or refuse this. Thank you.
Thank you. Walter, did you want to speak to that first? About the building code.
Yeah. A cursory review was done by the building department, testified by the memo that was submitted, and the only comment they had was to ensure that there was a 0.86 meter wide clear path from the door to the street. And there's no reason, based on the submission, there's no reason from their perspective that they believe that the proposal couldn't meet the requirements of the building code.
So, and to summarize, there's no additional square footage being added to the dwelling?
That's correct.
Yeah. Adam, you had your hand up?
Yeah, actually, just a question to planning. So far, just like reading the correspondence and the comments we've heard so far, I just hear a lot of concern about just adding another unit. Now, if this was not in a basement and they split their 2-level home where they had 1 story for each dwelling unit, would they even need to come here?
No, they would not. It would again, the municipality is not permitted by the province to regulate whether or not you're allowed to have a second or even a third dwelling unit within a detached home. They're permitted as of right by the province by legislation through the Planning Act.
Thank you. And my second question is, does provincial policy, if it's in conflict with a zoning bylaw, prevail?
If a local zoning bylaw is in conflict with provincial policy, well, not provincial policy, provincial regulation, meaning the Planning Act, then the Planning Act prevails. It supersedes our zoning requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody has their hand up online, and then I'll open it up in here too.
No, I'm just going to address the chair.
Okay.
I'm having a bit of a problem with my Wi-Fi, and that hand is stuck. It's not supposed to be up. So sorry about that.
Hi. I just wanted to
Who's speaking?
Oh, hi, my name's Irvi. I'm a resident of 5 Carpenter Court. I just wanted to add to what my husband said earlier. So my concern is about safety as well. We do have kids, again, who play outside all the time. At the moment, also in regards to parking, in that parking space, we do see 3 to 4 cars as of right now. So given if this approval goes through, there will be more cars and there will be parked on the street. Like, where would they park? That's my concern.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Did you wish to speak, sir, in the front?
So you mentioned that Vince Perry. I'm for Carpenter Court, along with all these other people here. As you can see, we've come in droves. There's lots of people also online right now in the Zoom call. I'm sorry if some of the messages made it come through. I guess people behind a keyboard can say things, but that's not the incentive here. As you can see, we're a multicultural court. But I'm very concerned that we're taking this Bill 23 a little bit too technically. I think the bill was made as a suggestion. It wasn't it defined as a law. And it shouldn't supersede what we, as original purchasers of these homes, bought and assumed when we purchased these homes. That's the original bylaw, right? The original bylaw states, and it states there, it should not be superseded. Now, if Ford comes in and gives this Bill 23 as a suggestion, and now it's going to supersede, I think that's absolutely absurd. People have bought these homes with the intention of living peacefully without having 3 dwellings in it. Now, let me state it this way. I'm sure all of you live in Grimsby, all right? And if this is happening in your neighborhood, I'm sure you'd be quite upset. And if you had young kids, and if you're at that stage in your life, like 98% of us are here. People usually don't care until it falls at their front door. Now it's at our front door. And we're asking 3 dwelling units per 18 homes. That could become absurd, and you're going to set a precedent that is unacceptable, not safe. And when something happens, guess where the finger's going to come, right? It's not just one home. There's 100 homes in there. Please, take that into consideration for our community, for our kids, for our peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, sorry. Come on up.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us, and I may be one of those people who is guilty, if you call it prejudicial. You think I was being prejudicial in the way I presented some of my arguments. I do not live on the court. I am looking at the global impact in Grimsby. I come from England. I have seen it in England, where we have had a lot of new immigrants congregate in one area. When Toronto and Canada opened the doors, I am one of the immigrants who was there, who lived in a substandard home because I was a refugee. So anyone who points fingers at any of my communications as being prejudicial would not be correct, because I have seen with my own eyes the impact of basement apartments. I have actually even seen the impact in Hamilton, where student houses have taken over the peace and quiet that was in the neighborhood. And I have presented today's Globe and Mail article about the effect that Brampton is suffering from because of secondary suites. And that is all I can say. If Grimsby has taken the decision to open up what Brampton, Mississauga, and today they're talking about Hamilton, Windsor also being impacted by some of these issues, you have to tread very carefully. But particularly in the case of a court location, where I hear Maria, or Nona as everyone calls her, who originally left her 4,000 square foot home in Oakville so that she could escape the crowds, to be in peace and quiet for her retirement, and to have, like Nishan pointed out, having 18 times, is it 3, the number that you quoted? Is it going to be a case of the last person being denied because there's already so many basement apartments in that court? So the first person will be allowed, but the last person will be, look at all the traffic, look at all the children's safety that's been compromised, and therefore you're the last one and you're being denied. Let's be fair. This court location is simply not appropriate, is not befitting. It's not befitting to have the kind of issues that Brampton, Mississauga are already experiencing. I have seen with my eyes, before I left England, the same impact that's happening there, that's happening here. So please do listen to Nona. She, from the bottom of her heart, is a next door neighbor, and we cannot expose people who are old, in their 80s, or children who are innocent to this kind of chaos that's going to follow. Thank you for listening.
Sorry, I forgot to ask your name and address for the record. I apologize.
Sorry, it's Nimisha, and I'm at 64 Waterview Lane. I have concerns because obviously in my neighborhood, which is facing the lake, there's a potential for basement apartments, there's a potential for Airbnb. And Brampton at the moment talk about 25 people in a basement apartment. In Grimsby, there is no need because we already have so many low income, low rental in the surrounding area. We are not Brampton, where there is no availability unless basement apartments are installed. And this is the reason a blind eye had been cast, because there is a housing crisis, no doubt about it. Some of the neighbors said, why would you object? Because there is a housing crisis. I have been a student myself, living in a basement apartment, but there are sub-court locations like this that are simply not appropriate. There are so many other issues that will follow. I could go on forever because I've already presented some of my arguments, but you need to open your eyes, because honestly, once you open the door, there's no turning back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Sir? Again, just keep it brief if it's a repeat of what we've said or people have said.
John Fitzhenry, 57 Lampman Drive. My question would be more regarding at what point does safety become the larger concern over a dwelling? I have an unfortunate situation at my end of the street. I'm not necessarily directly at the court, but at my end of the street where there are multiple families living in one house. The result of this situation is they have 7, 8, 9 cars at any time. This situation is now the rest of the residents at that end of the street, we're right at a corner. We don't have anywhere to park for our families. And while the plan may stipulate that there is parking, if you've ever parked in a driveway that is full of cars, quite often they don't get pulled in until the end of the night in case somebody in the front cars needs to go out. So technically there might be room for them, but they aren't always used throughout the day. I have had a car from Manitoba outside my house for 3 months. It has not moved. It is one of these families, one of the families that lives in this house. So again, I understand the need for people to go through the process and for them to do things the legal way. But the idea of doing it the legal way is that there may be a no. If it's just going to be a yes, why have the process at all? Thank you for your time.
Could I have somebody explain, just for my own edification, what's your safety issue that you're raising? Because everybody's raised safety. So is it a traffic safety or people safety?
In my particular situation, like I said, at any given time, 7, 8, 9 cars, because multiple families, It's right on a corner. And in our community, on Lampman Drive, the sidewalk runs down one side of the street. And where I live, it's an inside corner. What's happened is, because of the location of the house and where the people park, they park right around the corner. You can see the school buses when they come by. There's always some sort of commotion there. When they try and turn around, cars coming the other way. Kids can't see to cross because there are always cars parked around that corner. I know safety is a cliche when it comes to things like this, but I urge you, come and have a look at some of these situations, specifically around bus drop-off time. It's a problem. And adding some of these cars, and as we all have kids, they're going to get older and have cars. If this is in addition to some basement apartments that get approved along the way over the next 10 years, the infrastructure is not there. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. And Mauro, your comment about safety too, I'm just wondering, what?
How do you know my name? I didn't even say my name.
Yes, you did. And you're on the list. I saw your name on the list.
Fancy seeing you here. Safety is paramount. You heard it from the community. We have no other objections.
Sorry, we're going to have to do it.
I thought they could.
Because you're starting to talk, so.
You gotta go to the speaker.
And you don't have sidewalks. And the people online can't hear otherwise? Sorry.
Sorry, yeah. It's not to be construed any other way than safety. It's paramount in this community. We're all pretty well young families. We escaped urban communities to live in the suburbs. We didn't think the suburbs were going to follow us. It's that simple. If you take a look at the map of Carpenter Court, there is no parking on our streets. Every house is nestled within the court. There is one parking spot in that court. Guess where it is? It's in front of my house. So I don't object to people using that parking spot, but we've got kids in that cul-de-sac that turn it into Pleasantville. We're talking soccer, street hockey. We invested. We paid the builder a premium to live in there, and we're not knocking home values and prices. We all did very well there. I'm not going to dispute that. But at the very same time, we didn't expect their safety to be jeopardized. That's what it boils down to. It's kids on top of kids in that cul-de-sac. And the gentleman that spoke about his street, I wasn't even aware of that. I empathize, because even within our cul-de-sac, when we have guests, we're getting ticketed because our guests are parking in the middle of the cul-de-sac because there's absolutely nowhere to park. There's just no parking. And it boils down to just the safety of our kids.
Okay.
So we would like to think we can get more informed on the bylaws that are currently being investigated, because it sounds like you have a little more work to do here. We weren't aware of that. We didn't realize that they were still up against some variances that we weren't aware of. Only building code? Okay. So if this cleared all building codes, just let the voice of the neighborhood please factor into your decision-making. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is it about drainage? Okay, then you can. Oh, sorry, we're going to have, I apologize, we're going to have to make you go up, I'm sorry. There's more than people just in the room. Maybe just to state your name again, sorry, because it's a
Kathleen.
different application.
Kathleen Raswich.
Okay, thank you.
Next door neighbor to our issue here. Anyway, what I'm talking about, everyone's talking about kids playing on the streets, no sidewalks. Where are the parks? How come Grimsby doesn't have more parks for the people living in Grimsby? Why do you have to walk 5 miles to get to a park? There should be a park every other neighborhood so the kids have a place to play. And the elderly people can go for a walk and sit and feed the birds. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Is the applicant online, Mr. Singh? Did you want to respond to some of the comments and concerns raised? I don't know if you can see. I can't see him, so.
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
So I do understand the concerns from the neighborhood, but to object a second unit in a basement or to object anybody creating a second unit. I don't understand like where that is coming from, because uh, even if they have bought the house, they're not going to. Who knows how long anybody is going to stay in that particular house? People do sell the houses, and to stop anybody creating or making changes to their house, even if they are meeting the bylaws and the building codes. So I don't understand that. That is only my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then, being no further questions or comments or concerns, any final questions from the committee members before I call for a motion? Fabia?
Question.
Yep.
Through the chair, I'd like to know the size of the square footage of the apartment, and how many people will be living in that apartment. What's the projected renter that will be in that apartment?
I don't think we can ask that. We can ask the square footage of the apartment. That was the first half. That was the basement square footage.
But is it like is it a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 1-bedroom?
Mr. Singh, do you know the square footage and the configuration that the proposal is for?
It's a 2-bedroom apartment, and total square footage of the apartment is 742 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. In question to planning, it's going back again to the secondary suite is not located solely. Sorry. Okay. So, yeah, I just want to go back to the part of the zoning bylaw that says the secondary suite is not located solely within a cellar. We've had these in the past, and I've always had a problem with this because to me that says that it's prohibited, correct? If it's solely in the cellar, it would be prohibited.
Thank you. It's a provision in the zoning bylaw, like a side yard. It's not a prohibition. It's like saying the house can't be more than or closer than 1.8 meters to the side lot line. So it's a provision in the zoning bylaw that determines location as opposed to prohibition altogether. Now we're not. Yeah, that's it. I was going to say something else, but I don't think it's relevant.
Okay, thanks. No, just because my concern is that just reading through a lot of different OLT cases and things like that, where something in the zoning bylaw is basically a binary choice, is or isn't. When you flip it around with the 4 tests, they actually consider it not consistent with the zoning bylaw, and it's because it's such a radical flip, they consider it minor. It's not considered minor. So this is where I've always had trouble with these applications in that regard. So,
fair comment. Anyone else on the committee? No. Then do I have a motion? Dylan, go ahead. If you could read the motion.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. Let me just get it up on my screen. I apologize. So, be it resolved that minor variance application A06-24 for 9 Carpenter Court to permit an entrance to the secondary unit in the basement via the side yard, whereas a side yard entrance is not permitted as per section 4.19C in zoning bylaw 14-45 as amended to permit a secondary suite located solely in a cellar basement, whereas secondary suites located solely within a cellar basement are not permitted as per section 4.19D in zoning bylaw 14-45 as amended, be approved because it meets all 4 tests, with the one condition that Public Works require confirmation that no side yard swale or existing drainage be impacted by the proposed side yard entrance to the secondary basement suite.
Thank you. Seconder?
Seconder.
Second, Fabia? Sorry, I didn't see that. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye, or raise their hand, sorry.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Was carried. 3-2. Okay, so there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Thank you for attending and for giving us your comments and feedback. Have a good evening. There being no further minutes, I think we're adjourned? Yes. Yeah.
Recording stopped.
Good job.